Aries. Before the year ends, let me ask you something. Not to rush you, but to tell you the truth. What if this quiet pressure you've been feeling isn't anxiety, but readiness? December 30th doesn't arrive loudly. It doesn't push. It waits until you stop fighting and finally stand still long enough to feel your own fire come back online. If your chest feels heavier, but clearer. If your decisions suddenly feel simpler. If something in you knows you can't carry the old version into what's next. That's not imagination. That's timing recognizing you. Aries, you're not late. You're right on the edge. Stay with me. Trust what your body already knows. And if this truth is landing, say it in the comments. I'm ready. Because what opens next was never meant to be rushed. Aries, before the year ends, there's something I want you to feel before you try to understand it. Not urgency, not pressure, just that quiet, unmistakable sense that waiting any longer would feel dishonest. It's like standing in a doorway with your hand already on the frame, not rushing through, not turning back, just knowing you've reached the place where staying still would cost more than moving forward. You didn't arrive here by accident? You didn't click this at random? There's a reason this moment found you before the calendar turns. Because something in you already knows, this year can't follow you into the next one the way it is. December 30th isn't a dramatic date. It doesn't announce itself with noise or celebration. It's quieter than that. It's the kind of moment that only speaks when you finally stop fighting your own timing. And I can hear it in you now, that subtle shift. The way your breath changes when you realize you're done rehearsing old versions of yourself. The way your chest tightens, then softens, when you admit you're ready, even if you don't have all the answers yet. This isn't about rushing. You've rushed enough in your life. This is about responding. Responding to a rhythm that's been building underneath everything you've been carrying. You've felt it, haven't you? That strange mix of restlessness and clarity. Like the fire inside you isn't burning wild anymore. It's steady, focused, waiting for the right moment to move with intention instead of impulse. That's what this threshold feels like. Not chaos, not fear, but readiness that doesn't need to shout. And maybe part of you keeps asking, why now? Why before the year ends? Why not wait until everything looks cleaner, safer, more certain? But deep down, you already know the answer. Some doors don't open at the start of a new chapter. They open when you finally close the old one honestly. December 30th carries that energy. Not a finish line, a release point. The moment where you stop dragging unfinished weight behind you and realize you don't need it anymore. If your body has been signaling this, if sleep has been lighter or deeper, if your patience has thinned for things that once felt acceptable, if your instincts feel sharper, calmer, less apologetic. That's not restlessness. That's alignment returning to your system. You're not losing time. You're reclaiming it. And I want you to notice something right now. How it feels to hear this without needing to defend yourself. Without needing to explain where you've been or why it took this long. There's nothing to justify here. You're standing exactly where you're meant to stand, right at the edge, between what no longer fits and what's quietly been waiting for you to say yes. Stay with me here. Don't rush past this feeling, because once you recognize the doorway, the next step doesn't come from effort, it comes from clarity. And that's where we're going next. And as you stay here a little longer, you might start to notice something subtle happening inside you. Not excitement, not urgency, but a quiet recalibration. December 30th doesn't arrive to push you forward. It arrives to settle you into yourself. Like the moment just before a flame steadies, when it stops flickering and begins to burn clean. This is not the kind of energy that demands action. It doesn't shout for change. It doesn't rush you into resolutions or promises you can't keep. Instead, It gathers everything you've lived through this year and gently asks, what stays, and what no longer needs to come with you? There's a closing happening here, not an ending filled with loss, but the kind that brings relief to your shoulders when you finally set something down, the kind that lets your breath deepen without effort. You've been integrating more than you realize. Every moment where you chose restraint instead of reaction. Every time you paused before saying yes. Every time you walked away from a version of yourself that no longer felt true. None of that was accidental. This is what December 30th holds for you. A moment of internal agreement, where your mind, your body, and your instincts finally stop arguing with each other. And that's why it feels different this time. You're not waiting for the new year to save you. You're not hoping January will magically fix what December exposed. You're standing here now, aware, present, and grounded in a way that doesn't need permission. Your fire feels different, doesn't it? Not explosive, not impatient, but clear. It's the kind of fire that knows where it belongs. The kind that warms instead of burns. The kind that doesn't waste itself trying to prove it's real. You might notice your body responding before your thoughts catch up. A loosening in your jaw, a steadiness in your chest. Decisions that suddenly feel simpler, not because the options changed, but because you did. This isn't pressure, it's clarity settling into your nervous system. And clarity doesn't demand grand gestures. It doesn't require dramatic exits or bold declarations. Sometimes it simply asks you to stand where you are and stop pretending you don't know what you know. You don't need to leap. You don't need to announce anything yet. You just need to recognize that the ground beneath you feels solid again. That's the activation, not movement. Alignment. When your fire finds its rhythm, the rest begins to organize around it naturally. You stop forcing timelines. You stop negotiating your worth. You stop mistaking exhaustion for motivation. You start trusting what feels steady instead of what feels loud. And right now, there's a quiet confidence returning to you. Not the kind that dominates a room, the kind that doesn't need to. This moment isn't asking you to become someone new. It's inviting you back into the version of yourself that was always meant to lead the next chapter. Calm, decisive, unapologetically aligned. Stay with this feeling. Let it settle fully. Because once clarity takes root, it begins to open something deeper. And that's where we're heading next. And once that clarity settles, something else begins to return to you. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but in a way that feels familiar, like recognizing your own footsteps after walking in the dark for too long. This is the first blessing. And no, it isn't money. It's something far more stabilizing than that. It's the quiet return of direction. That feeling of knowing where you are headed. Even if the full map hasn't appeared yet. Even if the road ahead is still partially hidden by fog. What changes now is not the world around you. It's the way you stand inside it. You may notice it in small moments, the way certain options stop pulling at you, the way distractions lose their grip, the way you no longer feel the need to explain your choices just to make them feel valid. Your sense of agency is coming back online, not the impulsive kind, not the kind that pushes forward just to prove strength, but the grounded authority that knows when to move and when to wait without losing confidence. You're starting to trust your own timing again. There's a decision forming near you. You don't need to chase it. You don't need to force it into existence. It's already shaping itself around who you've become. It may show up through work, through a project that suddenly feels aligned instead of draining. Through a role that asks you to step forward without asking you to betray yourself. And the most important part is this: you won't feel rushed into saying yes. You'll feel calm enough to choose. That's how you'll know this is different. Because for a long time, you made decisions under pressure, out of urgency, out of fear of missing out, out of loyalty to versions of yourself that were built for survival, not fulfillment. But that phase is loosening its grip now. You're reclaiming the right to say no without guilt, to pause without self-punishment, to choose a path because it fits, not because it proves something. This is leader energy returning in its mature form. Not loud, not dominant, but steady enough that others can feel it when you walk into a room. And you might wonder why this feels so relieving. Why having fewer options suddenly feels like freedom. It's because direction doesn't come from doing more. It comes from shedding what no longer aligns. You're no longer trying to become powerful. You're remembering that you already are. That's the blessing here. The reorientation. The internal compass correcting itself without resistance. And as that sense of direction settles deeper into your body, something else begins to soften alongside it. The tension you've been holding in your chest. The alertness that never fully shut off. The need to stay ready for impact. You don't lose your fire. You refine it. And when fire becomes steady, it doesn't just light the way forward. It creates safety for what comes next. Stay with this feeling, because once direction is restored, the next layer begins to reveal itself quietly. And once your direction feels steady again, something else begins to shift around you. Not with noise, not with announcements or applause. It moves the way real abundance always does. Quietly, almost respectfully. Money doesn't rush toward you right now. It doesn't crash into your life demanding attention. It arrives the way a long exhale does after holding your breath for too long. You might notice it first as relief, not excitement, not disbelief, just a sense that you are no longer scrambling. For a long time, you accepted compensation that came with conditions, invisible ones, the kind that asked you to shrink, to overextend, to prove you deserved what should have been simple and fair. But that chapter is loosening its grip. What comes now carries a different tone. It feels clean, unforced, like an exchange that respects both sides of the table. This is abundance rooted in self-respect. You may see it through something that was delayed finally finding its way to you, a payment that arrives without drama, an offer that makes sense without asking you to sacrifice your boundaries, an opportunity that does not require you to explain who you are or why you matter. And the most important shift happens inside you, not outside. You are no longer reaching from a place of lack. You are standing in your value and allowing the world to meet you there. That changes everything. Because when money arrives without tension, it stays longer. When it comes without guilt, it integrates. When it meets you at eye level, it supports, rather than controls. You may feel your relationship with receiving soften. No need to justify. No need to rush. No need to overgive to earn your place. You begin to understand that leadership is not about endurance. It is about discernment. Knowing what you will no longer trade yourself for. And there is power in that. A quiet power. The kind that stabilizes your nervous system and allows your fire to burn without burning you. This is not about sudden wealth. It is about sustainable worth. About being paid without losing yourself. About allowing resources to reflect the respect you have finally claimed internally. You may notice your choices around money becoming calmer, clearer, less reactive. You are not chasing numbers anymore. You are aligning with value, and value responds differently to you now, because you are no longer negotiating your worth with the past. You are standing in the present and letting life respond accordingly. This kind of abundance does not create chaos. It creates space, space to breathe, space to choose, space to lead without resentment. And as that space opens, something even more subtle begins to move. The vigilance you carried for years starts to ease. The constant readiness to defend your position begins to fade. You are no longer bracing for loss. You are learning how to receive without flinching. Stay with this feeling, because when worth is honored, the next blessing does not arrive through effort. It arrives through peace. And that is where the story continues. And as that sense of worth settles into your body, something even quieter begins to happen. At first, you might miss it, because it does not announce itself. It does not arrive with excitement or relief that needs words. It arrives as calm, not the empty kind, not the kind that comes from giving up, but the deep, steady calm that only comes when your nervous system finally realizes it does not have to stay on guard anymore. For so long, your fire had to defend itself. You were always ready, always alert, always bracing for the next demand, the next challenge, the next moment where you would need to prove you belonged. Even rest felt temporary. Even silence felt like something you had to earn. But listen closely now. That tension is loosening. You may notice it at night first. Sleep comes easier, deeper. Not because life suddenly became perfect, but because your body no longer feels like it has to stand watch. Your reactions slow, not because you lost your edge, but because you no longer need to swing at everything that moves. You begin to pause, to breathe before responding, to choose your battles instead of letting them choose you. And there is something powerful in that. You stop needing to win in order to feel real. You stop needing to explain your strength. You stop measuring your worth by how much you can endure. This is what a mature fire feels like. Still warm, still alive, but no longer scattered. Your energy gathers itself. It stops leaking through overthinking and overgiving and unnecessary resistance. It becomes contained, focused, trustworthy, and when fire becomes steady, it creates safety, not just for others, but for you. This calm you are touching now is not weakness. It is regulation. It is your system learning that peace does not mean loss of power. It means sustainability. You can hold more now because you are not burning yourself out to stay visible. You can receive more because your body knows how to keep it. This is why blessings can stay. Not because you fought harder, not because you proved anything, but because you finally made space inside yourself for stability. You may find yourself craving quieter mornings, simpler rhythms, moments where nothing needs to happen, and yet everything feels aligned. That is not avoidance. That is recovery. And recovery is not the opposite of strength. It is the foundation of it. As this calm continues to settle, you begin to realize something important. You are no longer afraid of slowing down, because slowing down no longer feels like falling behind. It feels like coming home to your center. Your fire is steady now. And that steadiness changes what you attract, what you tolerate, what you build next. Stay with this feeling. Let it root, because once your nervous system learns peace, it becomes possible to let go of what you have been carrying for far too long. And that release is already beginning to call you forward. And as that calm takes hold, something else begins to surface. Not urgency, not regret, but a gentle honesty. December 30th carries this quiet invitation, not to rush forward, but to finally stop dragging what no longer belongs in your hands. You can feel it now, the weight you've been carrying out of habit, old battles that trained you to stay sharp, old roles you learned how to play just to survive certain seasons. You wore them well. They kept you moving when you had no other choice. But they were never meant to be permanent. And this moment knows that. Letting go doesn't arrive as failure here. It arrives as relief. Like setting down armor you forgot you were still wearing. You don't need to prove how strong you were back then. You don't need to replay the fight to justify your scars. You lived it. That's enough. There is something deeply respectful about choosing to end a chapter cleanly. Not slamming the door, not burning the bridge, just closing it with awareness. December 30th offers that kind of ending, a conscious one. You may feel drawn to small, quiet gestures, a pen moving across paper, words you never said finally finding a place to rest, not to accuse, not to relive, just to acknowledge. I don't need to fight this anymore. There is power in that sentence when it comes from your chest instead of your pride, because release is not surrender. It is elevation. You are not walking away because you are tired. You are walking away because you see more clearly now. You see how much energy was being spent holding things together that were never meant to last. You see how many decisions were shaped by pressure instead of truth. You see how often you stayed engaged simply because letting go felt unfamiliar. But unfamiliar does not mean unsafe. And right now, your body knows it. That steadiness you feel is not indifference. It is resolution. You are choosing not to carry the old year forward out of loyalty to pain. You are choosing to honor what you learned without becoming it. That is maturity. That is leadership. That is courage in its quiet form. There is no audience for this moment, no applause, just you and the clarity you earned. And when you release like this, something subtle happens. Space opens, not empty space, intentional space, the kind that invites new connections, new alignments, new ways of meeting life without armor. You are not erasing who you were. You are integrating them, taking the wisdom, leaving the weight. That is how endings become thresholds instead of wounds. Stay here for a breath. Feel how light your hands are becoming. Because once you stop carrying the old roles, you begin to notice who is able to walk beside you next. And that is already starting to reveal itself. And with your hands finally free, you begin to notice who can walk beside you without asking you to carry them. This part doesn't rush in. It doesn't announce itself as destiny. It arrives the way familiarity does when it feels safe enough to be real. You may feel it before you see it. A sense of ease around certain people, a conversation that doesn't drain you, a presence that doesn't require you to explain your fire or soften it to be accepted. This is not about someone coming to save you. That chapter closed when you learned how to stand on your own. What appears now meets you at eye level. Someone who doesn't need you to perform. Someone who doesn't flinch at your strength. Someone who understands the rhythm you're moving in now and doesn't try to speed it up or slow it down. And that matters more than chemistry ever could. Because the Aries you are now isn't looking for intensity. You've had enough of that. You're looking for resonance, the kind that feels steady in your body, the kind that lets your shoulders drop instead of bracing, the kind that doesn't compete with your purpose or ask you to choose between connection and self-respect. This may show up as a partner, or as an ally, or as someone whose role isn't romantic at all, but deeply supportive in a way that changes how you move forward. What makes this different is how little effort it takes to stay aligned. You don't need to explain your boundaries. You don't need to fight for space. You don't need to prove that you're worth listening to. You're met where you are. And that is what equal connection feels like. There's no pulling, no rescuing, no power struggle disguised as passion, just mutual recognition. This is the kind of bond that doesn't burn your fire, it shelters it. And you may notice that old patterns don't activate here. No urgency, no fear of abandonment. No instinct to overgive just to keep something alive. You remain yourself, fully. That's how you'll know this connection belongs to the version of you that's stepping forward now, not the one that learned how to survive before. This isn't about replacing what you lost. It's about reflecting what you've become. And that reflection can be deeply grounding. Because when you're no longer carrying the weight alone, you begin to see yourself more clearly. Not through comparison, not through conflict, but through shared presence. The right people don't dim your fire. They trust it. They don't lean on you to feel powerful. They walk beside you because they are grounded in their own strength. And as this alignment settles, you may feel a quiet confirmation inside you that you don't have to do the next part alone. And you don't have to merge yourself away to be accompanied. Stay open, not searching, just available. Because when you've released the old roles and reclaimed your center, the right connections recognize you without being summoned. And as these bonds begin to take shape, something even deeper waits ahead. A moment where everything you've integrated asks one final question. And that is where the story gently turns next. And now, as everything settles into place, there's something important I want you to hear. December 30th does not ask you to be perfect. It doesn't require you to have everything figured out. It doesn't measure you by how fearless you are or how much you've achieved. It simply asks if you're ready. Ready in the way that matters. Not polished. Not invincible. But honest. You've walked far enough to know what doesn't work anymore. You've carried enough weight to recognize when it's time to set it down. You've felt enough pain to understand that growth does not need to be violent to be real. That matters. Because the blessings moving toward you now are not rewards for effort. They are responses to alignment. They arrive not because you pushed harder, but because you stopped pushing against yourself. You stopped fighting your own timing. You stopped questioning your worth every time life asked you to pause. You stopped trying to earn peace through exhaustion. That shift changes everything. You may not fully see it yet, but something in you already knows the ground ahead is different, softer, more supportive, capable of holding what comes next. This is what maturity looks like for a fire sign. Not dimming, not cooling off, but learning how to burn without destruction. You didn't lose your edge, you refined it. And now, what's waiting for you does not need you to arrive wounded. It does not need you to arrive proving anything. It simply needs you present. Triple blessing does not mean 3 loud miracles at once. It means 3 layers of alignment finding you at the same time. Direction, worth, peace. Each one reinforcing the other. Each one staying because you finally made room for them. You're not standing at the end of something. You're standing inside a quiet handoff, where the old version of you steps back with respect, and the next version steps forward without needing permission. And maybe that's why this moment feels different. Not dramatic, but meaningful. Like the moment you realize you no longer need to wait for life to begin, because you're already in it. So take a breath here, not to prepare, but to acknowledge. You did the work, you showed up, you stayed long enough to learn what mattered, and now nothing is being demanded of you, only offered. Before the year ends, before the calendar turns and the noise begins again, there's one quiet question resting in front of you, not asked by the universe, but by yourself. Before the year ends, are you ready to step into what's already waiting for you? And Aries, before you leave this space, let me say this slowly. If this message found you tonight, it's not because you were searching, it's because something in you was ready to remember. You didn't imagine the shift. You didn't misread the signs. That quiet sense of arrival you're feeling right now is real. This isn't the kind of moment that explodes. It settles, it roots, it stays, and that's how you'll know this season is different. You're no longer being prepared. You're being trusted. Trusted with clarity. Trusted with peace. Trusted with the next version of your life that doesn't require you to bleed just to feel alive. If your chest feels warm instead of tight, if your thoughts feel slower but clearer, if something in you feels seen without being explained, that's your confirmation. Don't rush away from it. Take a moment and honor it. Type one simple sentence in the comments, even if no one else understands it. I'm ready. I trust myself. I choose alignment. When you do, you're not just interacting, you're anchoring this energy into form. And this community feels that, because you're not alone here, Aries. You're surrounded by others who are also choosing to stop fighting themselves, others who are learning how to carry fire without burning out, others who are stepping forward quietly, bravely, honestly. If this message resonated, stay connected. Subscribe, not out of habit, but out of alignment. Because the journey doesn't end here. This was not the conclusion. It was the threshold. There is another message already forming, another layer waiting to unfold. And it will meet you exactly where you are, not where you pretend to be. Until then, hold this truth close. You don't need permission anymore. You don't need to rush. And you don't need to doubt what your body already knows. Trust yourself, Aries. The fire you carry now knows where it's going. And I'll see you in the next message.